On the line right now, we have Dr. Amy Wolfson. She has a Ph.D. in clinical psychology. She's a Harvard graduate, and she is one of the people that is trying to get cities to start school, mostly middle school and high school, later. And you are a sleep specialist, Dr. Wolfson, and this is the main reason why you want schools to start later, let's say 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Living in a sleep-deprived society, we are particularly concerned about adolescents because as they move into adolescence, literally, physically, they experience what is referred to biologically a circadian phase delay. What that means is they are biologically not ready to go to sleep as early as they were before they entered adolescence, which means their natural time to fall asleep is later in the evening, meaning later wake-up times. And that, in addition to all the other things that interfere with getting sufficient sleep, which we can talk about, there's a clash between their sleep-wake schedule and the times we're asking adolescents to show up for middle school or high school. So it's as if with any school district that has early school start times, say, anywhere between as early as 7 all the way up to 8 or even 8:30, you're asking adolescents to basically, it's like traveling, it's like experiencing jet lag. We call it social jet lag. So in addition to other things that interfere with getting sufficient sleep, we're asking them to be on a schedule that is sort of inappropriate developmentally.
Well, there's been a proposal here in Massachusetts to do that with middle schools and high schools, to start them later, and mostly for the reasons you stated there. And just to give people a little further background, you lived in Worcester for, did you say 25 years? You taught at Holy Cross?
I did. I taught at Holy Cross for 23 years and lived in Worcester for about 25 years. Correct. Yep. Okay.
So she knows the area. She knows what the commute is like here. She knows, she's familiar. So my big question there is, there's a couple, but one is like, if you're going to start school at 9, how that would be a conflict with whatever work commute the parents may have. So if a parent has to drive their kid to school, that might mess them up in getting to their job on time. If the kid has to make a bus, same thing. It'll kind of shake that up. That was my main concern. Basically, was like,
yeah, and it's certainly a concern that all cities around the country and states that have navigated the waters of setting guardrails for school start times. For example, the state of California passed very similar legislation to the proposed legislation in Massachusetts. That certainly is a concern, but what has happened is certainly the Massachusetts legislation that's being proposed has a 3-year implementation period. And what that has meant in other cities, and another example beyond California is the city of Seattle, which delayed school start times. They took some time, though, to help families to think about transportation issues, ultimately still knowing that the goal is to have developmentally appropriate school start times. So yes, there could be some adjustment for the city of Worcester, but I think at the end of the day, we're talking about middle school and high school students, and we have to look out for what's best for them. And just so you know, Worcester as an example, since I was there, Worcester's been thinking about this themselves as a city now for decades, and you can look, there are stories after stories in the TNG. I was interviewed years ago. The late, oh my gosh, now I'm not going to think of his name. One of the school council members, I know he's no longer with us, was advocating for this, as was the late Greta McNeil, who was my colleague at Holy Cross. So Worcester's talked about this for a long time.
Some other things you brought up about conditions that students may encounter when it comes to getting enough rest. Some may have, it's economic. Some may have to share a bed with a sibling.
Absolutely.
And then in some neighborhoods, there's different kinds of noise, whether it's caused by crime or something else. Those conditions won't change. So how will they be able to, even though school starts later, I'm feeling that they would probably get the same amount of sleep.
Well, researchers show it's a terrific question. I should just tell you it's an excellent question. But the way we see it as you can make individual level changes or you can make systemic changes. And so this is a systemic change that hopefully benefits more adolescents than individual change. So you're absolutely right. These are other systemic issues that you're bringing up, but you're still bettering youth who may be disadvantaged in other ways by at least giving them a school start time that's more developmentally advantageous. And we know from work that's looked at disadvantaged or underrepresented minority communities or youth who live at or below the poverty line, that it may be harder to get access to, individual, parents driving them to school or, individual sleep hygiene help, et cetera. But and as you suggested, perhaps more crowded living circumstances by at least creating guardrails, as we sometimes refer to them. In other words, what's the earliest time we're going to allow kids in Massachusetts, including Worcester, to have to report into school? You're giving them some boost or help.
Another factor, and I have personal experience with this. I have a daughter. She's 21 now, but she was losing sleep because of TikTok specifically, or Snapchat, and scrolling, and we tried to take her phone away at night. We tried a lot of different things, and it just that seems to me to be a really huge issue. Does the study cover that at all? Like at home, how to handle like the root of the problem, how to handle social media and kids and trying to get them to put the phone away to get sleep?
Well, I wouldn't say it's the root of the problem. I would say it exacerbates the problem. So the root of the problem is what I explained. But in addition, we now have, as we all know, and adults are guilty of this as well. So absolutely, that's again at the individual level. I think families need to think about, family rules. Should the phone have to stay in the kitchen at night? And sort of helping the adolescent to see how much being on TikTok, being on social media, being even sometimes even the light from the phone or the iPad interfering with being able to fall asleep. So certainly there are kids who are going to burn the candle at both ends in addition to what's going on for them physiologically. But one thing that's really interesting from research that now goes back over 20 years, study after study, including some of my own work, what we've demonstrated is that when you delay school start times, everyone thinks, oh, well, are these adolescents who are on TikTok, et cetera, just going to stay up even later?
Yeah.
And they don't. They don't. So where we tend to see there's almost a direct correspondence between starting school later and it's really the morning wake up. So the adolescents tend to go to sleep at the same time, but then they sleep in later in the morning because now they can because they're starting school later in the morning. And that's how they get more sleep during the week. They're always going to be, at each end of the normal curve, there always are going to be those adolescents that push the envelope that you're going to have to, at the individual level, think about interventions and set rules and help educate the adolescent to get them off of their cell phone. But they're still going to benefit from the later school start time.
So you're saying it's the waking up process that needs more time.
By being able to wake up, well, it's not so much needing more time. It's just that your body, as I said earlier, because of the circadian phase delay, adolescents fall asleep later in the evening, even without being on TikTok, and wake up later in the morning. So if school starts at 8:30 or 9, an adolescent maybe, depending on the length of their commute, doesn't have to get up until, say, 7 or 7:30. If you have school starting at 7:30 or, God forbid, as early as 7, they're being pushed to get up when their body's saying, you need to still sleep. You're not going to be able to get up.
This is from personal experience with my daughter.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
She was getting up hours early just to get ready for school. At that age, middle school, high school, of course, your appearance is very important. And so would something like school uniforms make a difference in that?
Gosh, it's not. Yeah, now you're asking me to talk about something out of my area of expertise.
Well,
I mean,
I'm just.
I mean, there's personal views on school uniforms. I mean, we do know that, and there are some obvious gender differences on the issue of how much time kids need to get ready for the morning in school. And you're talking here now about yes, some adolescents and perhaps maybe girls more than boys take more time in the morning to look the way they want to look. But again, it's still going to be for those girls. Yes, you want to help them to say you don't need as much time to get ready in the morning. But again, by having a later school start time, you are still helping those girls as well.
Okay. I appreciate your insights on this. It's something that I wasn't fully convinced about. I think maybe I'm convinced a little more now that I've spoken to you and you've given me some more facts and I appreciate that. So thank you very much, Dr.
Well, another way to saying thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I love talking to anyone in the Worcester area. I'm actually heading up this week. I'm going to be in Worcester later in the week to visit old friends. But what I will just say is that, we don't ask, we know, just sort of one more sort of example or way to think about this, we know that shift work, and particularly rotating shift work, which some adults have to do, is detrimental to their health as well, for the same reasons that early school start times are problematic for adolescents. And on a typical 9 to 5 job or 8:30 to 4:30 job, we don't ask adults to clock in at 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And yet so many school districts around the country, including Massachusetts, without such legislation, are asking adolescents to do so.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Dr. Wolfson, I'm going to have a question that has absolutely nothing to do with what we've just talked about, though. But you being from, you being from Worcester, and you lived here for, what'd you say, 25 years?
I lived there all 25 years.
Okay.
Yes.
What is and now you reside, I believe are you in Maryland?
I'm in the Baltimore area.
Okay.
Yes.
What is like the one thing you really miss about Worcester?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Well, I miss New England in general. Miss the beautiful fall foliage. I'm a skier, so I miss the winter. My son was raised skiing at Mount Wachusett, and I miss my friends.
Yeah, those Virginia mountains are okay, but they're not great for skiing.
Definitely not. No, trust me. We now my son who was raised in Worcester now lives in Burlington, Vermont. So we head up there to get our ski fix. Yeah,
right. He's in the thick of it now.
But he raced for Wachusett Mountain when he grew up in Worcester. Yeah,
well, that's great. Well, Dr. Wolfson, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being patient with my questions. I appreciate that, and safe travels when you're coming back up here to visit the beautiful city of Worcester.
Well, that's great, and I look forward to being on the air in Worcester. So thank you.